finally figured out what room we're in and what's going on?
Yes, sir. Just waiting on the last two.
All right. All right, are we good?
Yes, sir. We're good.
Odie is good, sir.
All right, so before lunch, we covered Army Training Network, resources it has on it, DTMS, and kind of some down and dirty on how it could make your life better or worse. We covered how to pull the medal, and we covered how to get to your platoon tasks and how to search for individual tasks. Before we get into CATS, which is the Combined Arms Training Strategy site that has a lot of reports on it that you have to pull for your project, we're going to talk a little bit about the backwards planning training process. So let's start off with how training is planned. So first, you have a medal. The Army has dictated this medal to you. Back in the day, commanders used to create their medals based off this like 600-page regulation. It was horrible. You know, Captain Lasky, Second Lieutenant Lasky, showed up to his unit fresh out of Bolick, ready to save the world from terrorizers. And first conversation, my commander, hey, sir, what's our company medal so I know what to gear my training towards? Oh, we don't have one. What? What do you mean? You know what? That's your first task, LT. Make our company medal. So me being the faithful, diligent leader I was, thought he was just screwing with me and that was a test. No. Old dude was a real piece of work and had been in command for like 9 months and never developed a medal. So you guys don't have to deal with those messes anymore. The Army has delegated what your medal will be. So you have a medal, a mission essential task list. The Army says these are the tasks you have to train on to be able to conduct your mission. Cool. How do we figure out how we're going to train on that medal? Well, there's a million different ways. The easiest way for National Guard Reserve is you look at your yearly training memos that are pushed out based on the MUTA levels for your state. And then that translates into a breakdown of what you guys will be doing for every drill. If I'm somewhat accurate, Friday it's going to be a muster of troops. Saturday it's going to be admin processes, motor pool stuff, general screwing around and completing paperwork. Sunday, finalizing whatever documents you were able to get done, and then driving home. And the bulk of your stuff actually gets completed during AT. Here's how this is kind of supposed to go. So the Army gave you a medal. The medal's been pushed down. Now, we conduct training by the fiscal year. Fiscal year starts in October. October is the first quarter, so October through December is first quarter. All right, so typically before October, in September, there is a summit held, or a gigantic meeting, where the Battalion XO and the Battalion S3 and the battalion commander all meet, and they get the commander's training guidance. Now, this kind of trickles downhill, so really in about August, the brigade commander receives the training guidance from the division commander. And then the brigade commander pushes out the brigade's training guidance to the battalion. And then the battalion, around September, right before the fiscal year starts, pushes out the training guidance for the battalion to the subordinate companies. And all it is like a commander's statement. This is my vision for the training we're going to do for the next year. First quarter, I want to focus on this. Second quarter, I want to focus on this. Third quarter, I want to focus on this. Fourth quarter, I want to focus on this. In addition, the battalion commander can add different tasks like that may not be metal related or in the metal, such as CBRN. CBRN is a big one that they always want to train on due to the chemical weapons threats that are in the world. So they can add things like that as well. That lays out the battalion commander's guidance for the whole year. Then, once that probably 10-page in op order format or memo format is issued, then those same personnel, the S3 and the Battalion XO, they meet and come up with the first quarter fiscal year training guidance. So they take that year-long guidance the battalion commander has given them and that they published in an approved product and sent to all the chain of command, and they narrow it down, and they're like, okay, it's the month of September. We're going to plan the first quarter based on what we're going to do within the commander's guidance. So then they type up that product, and man, is it a bear. So they fight back and forth. The battalion commander's like, no, I never said that. And they're like, sir, it's in this 10-page document you wrote. What do we do? Ma'am, come on. You said one thing, you want us to do another. And eventually they get that hashed out, and they will publish the first quarter training guidance that is based off the battalion commander's intent. Once again, op order or memo format, pushed out to all the commanders. That is how the training guidance for the year goes and how it is kind of published. A big thing that feeds into this, and they feed back into it, are the SRTC and the LRTC, the short range training calendar and the long range training calendar. This is a bear in itself as well to accomplish. Last time I was in one of these, we took the plotter, which is a map printer, and we printed out an Excel spreadsheet of the entire year and taped it to the walls of our room and forced every company commander and XO to come in for the meeting so we were all on the same page. And when I say map printer, I mean like a 3-foot by 3-foot sheet of paper was 1 month. Now, that's how we did the short range and long range training calendar. But basically, here's the method for the madness. The long range training calendar is going to be, roughly 14 to 24 months out. And then the short range training calendar is going to be roughly 6 to 13 months out. Now, this is not an end-all, be-all document. Obviously, things change. You see what it's like here. Things change literally every day, multiple times a day. So what we're going to do is first, we're going to create that long-range training calendar. We're going to look 2 years out. And you, as the second lieutenant platoon leader, you have nothing to do with this yet. So the S3 shop sits down. The battalion S3 shop sits down and they look at the brigade S3 shop's LRTC long range training calendar, and they plot major events. Major events being, all right, so the entire brigade is going to deploy to a CTC. We'll say they're going to Fort Irwin to play in the sandbox for 30 days. And that's going to be, a big culminating event where we certify based on our battalion level TE&Os, kind of like a big gunnery or something. That would be on the long range training calendar. And we've got all of those large scale events plotted on the long range training calendar. That's about it. So anything big that we know is going to be locked in and not change is in the long range training calendar. Then we take that long range training calendar, and anything that would be put on the short range training calendar is put on it. So we take anything that was in those 6 to 13 months from the brigade's long range training calendar, and we put it in our short range training calendar. So that year, that maps out our year, our roadmap of large events. So from there, we know what massive training events we have to do in the quarters for that next 12 months. Then we look at the battalion commander's annual training guidance. The battalion commander may say that we're going to do an FTX every quarter, training on whatever tasks the battalion commander has identified. And at the end of every quarter, we do that FTX. And that FTX will be our culminating event so that we get certified on that task. So let's just say that we have 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's just say we have 8 medal tasks in the battalion, and say 6, and they correspond to 8 medal tasks in our company. In the company. So the battalion commander says we're going to train on 2 of those medal tasks every quarter. 2, 4, 6, 8. And within that quarter, we have 3 months. So first month is going to be crawl phase. Second month is going to be walk phase. Third month is going to be run phase. So first month, we're training in crawl and walk on our supporting collective tasks for those 2 overarching medal tasks the battalion commander identified. Second month, we're walking and we're transitioning to running. And then the last month, the final month of the quarter, we have that big FTX where there's an ex-eval present, and we perform all of our tasks with all of our TE&Os, and someone from outside our company or platoon grades us on those tasks, and they use the objective T criteria matrix, and that is how we get our medal rating. So we'll say, for that medal, those 2 tests, we came out with a P. Then the process repeats itself for the next quarter. Now, yesterday somebody asked about retraining. Well, this would be an example of we have to fix ourselves. So say that we trained on all those tasks, and after that big FTX from first quarter, we came out with a U minus. No bueno. Then that company commander has to come up with a training plan in order to retrain on those tasks to raise that proficiency level to, most a P plus, I think or a P is just the highest you can go. It's very difficult to jump from a U to a T in 1 quarter. It's meant to be kind of stair-stepped up. You don't just magically get great. So then that company commander has to come up with a plan on how to get from a U to a P on that task in the next quarter or throughout the upcoming quarters if they want to take a slower approach to it, while simultaneously training on the new tasks the battalion commander has identified for that second quarter. So you're still maintaining the second quarter training schedule, but you also have to come up with a retrain plan to improve yourselves on what you failed at in the previous quarter. And then, the process repeats itself. And usually those big combat training center rotations where you're going to Fort Irwin or Fort Polk or Camp Atterbury or whatever that place in Idaho is for the West Coast National Guard units. That's why those are typically in the summer, because you're approaching the third or fourth quarter. You should have been training on all of your tasks throughout the whole year based off that guidance. And then your culminating event to certify the unit in everything done by some professional organization like the cadre at Fort Irwin, Fort Polk, Camp Atterbury, that are nowhere, not in your battalion, not in your brigade, are certifying you on those medal tasks for your proficiency. It's the final test for your whole medal all at once. You had the whole year to train up to it. That's the big thing. So that's kind of the flow of how medal tasks and long-range training calendars and short-range training calendars feed into that yearly training plan. Now, what is relevant for you as a platoon leader is the backwards planning of it, because when the S3 shop is creating that short-range training calendar, what they're going to do is they're going to plot those major events, such as CTC rotations. They're also going to plot any battalion ranges. So they're probably going to have a battalion range twice a year, because you have to qualify on your weapons semi-annually. So they're going to have probably some sort of battalion range week in the fall and in the spring or summer. So they'll plot those up for battalion range weeks. And then any safety stand down days, they'll plot those, and anything like that. Another thing that they'll do is they'll look at the red cycle phase. Red cycle phase is provided by Garrison. Garrison publishes an op order and says, this brigade has this duty this month. This brigade has this responsibility this month. And it's tasks like area beautification, funeral detail and honors, gate guard and QRF, quick reaction force. The things that you see soldiers doing on real Army installations to improve them or help the installation out. And then the brigade publishes that and disseminates it to the subordinate battalions. So your subordinate battalion 3 shop would publish, we are in red phase of the red cycle tasking for this month, which tells us that we can't plan any big training during that month because, we're going to get assigned 2 or 3 training areas that we're going to have to go out and pick up trash and pine cones on. Or we're going to be on funeral detail that month, so we know we're going to be missing 24 soldiers that are going to be doing nothing but training on and performing military funerals and military ceremonies. Or we're going to be on gate guard and QRF that month, so we have to provide 12 soldiers to get trained on the gate guard procedures, and then an additional 12 soldiers with rifles and ammunition to be trained and on standby for QRF for the installation for that month. So that's how those little nitpicky taskings get factored in. So from there, as the platoon leader, they send that short-range training calendar to the companies. It gets to the company commander. The company commander forwards it to the XO and says, hey, do my light work. Company XO then takes any training events that the company commander wants to do, such as like an FTX every month or an STX, and inputs those on the short-range training calendar. And then the short-range training calendar gets pushed to you as the platoon leader. You as the platoon leader input your training for that entire year. Now, obviously, there's dialogue here. So you're going to meet with your company commander and your company XO. You're going to read the battalion commander's training guidance for the quarter and the year. You're going to make sure that you're training on those medal tasks. So you're going to take your little piece of the pie and plug your little piece of the pie for your platoon training in accordance with and the short-range training calendar events and what your company commander says and what your battalion commander says. You're going to plug those in to that spreadsheet for what you plan to be training on. Platoon FTXs, platoon sticks lanes, any kind of 350-1 stand down stuff if you're super organized and into that. you talk to your company commander, and hopefully the XO plots out the company ranges on there and then identifies which platoon leader is going to be running that range. So then you can add, so you're tracking your ranges, so to plan for yourself and your platoon sergeant running a range and having to do PMI and ammo issue and requesting the range, all that stuff. And that all gets put on that short range training calendar. Then it goes back to the top. Platoon leader goes to XO. XO reviews it, makes any corrections, talks with you and the commander before it gets approved. Then it goes up to the S3. The S3 looks at it, talks with the commander about any issues and makes any tweaks. Then the S3 combines that short range training calendar from every company and puts it all on one giant spreadsheet so everybody knows what all training is doing at all the time. Then the battalion commander reviews it, approves it, and then bam, you have a short range training calendar planned out for the whole year with every major event down to the platoon level with 1 million different color codings and tabs per company. And that is your training glide path on how you take that backwards planning and plan for things like ranges, red cycle taskings, safety stand down days, CTC rotations, and incorporating your platoon level tasks from the medal into the crawl, walk, run methodology that's going to meet your company commander's training strategy and intent and your battalion commander's training strategy intent by quarter for the whole year. That is how it kind of works from top to bottom, back up to top. I'm assuming I lost you.
Second Lieutenant Butt, sir, I feel like it was very well explained.
So, what questions do you guys kind of have on that process? Because it's going to be different everywhere you go.
Sir, this is Lieutenant Whalen. I just want to kind of to confer with the other guard soldiers. So in the state of South Dakota, we do 30, 60, 90 set in stone with 120 scribbled. And then the next 30 days, that'll become a 90. So we'll set that in stone in coordination with a yearly training calendar. So the whole year, we do what you said you did, sir, where you hang up those big papers of the short range training calendars. Well, we have these massive yearly training calendars, and then we do 30, 60, 90, 120s. Is that kind of what everybody else does in the National Guard? I don't know.
That's what my
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, that's
like,
well.
That's what mine does as well.
Cool. What else? What other questions or comments, things like that you guys have?
Stop being like this.
All right, it's not a trick question. If you don't have anything, we'll kind of move on. So, that being said, feeding into your training meeting, that company training meeting, the training meetings are the same way. Yesterday I said there's always a meeting before the meeting before the meeting. So typically, you'll have a platoon huddle with your key players to get prepped for your T+8 briefing. And then don't forget that T-2 before you go to your meeting with your company commander and first sergeant. That way you just don't look like a fool. You got the most up-to-date information. Then you go to the company training meeting. You sit down at the company training meeting. You brief about what I talked with T+8 down to T-2. And that's all hashed out and done. Then you have the meeting after the meeting, because obviously new information is going to get put out. So you're going to have a platoon huddle with your key players again and be like, hey, this is what happened. This is what the commander said. Here's what's going on. And you adjust fire from there. And then the company commander goes to the battalion training meeting and briefs the company piece of the pie to the battalion commander and the battalion S3, and they do basically the same thing. Like the battalion S3 holds a huddle with the company commanders to make sure they got the most up-to-date information so everybody's not getting screamed at for looking like a bunch of fools. Then you have the official meeting, and then guidance and changes are made, and then the company commander is going to pull everybody back in after that meeting and put out notes based on what's changed or, what's being adjusted for. So really there's a meeting before the meeting, and then the unofficial meeting after the meeting. And it's just a big trigger effect of all these meetings, and it's glorious. That being said, the T+8 method is good, and that's what a lot of people do. So typically 8 weeks out, you identify the training. But the problem is, if you're identifying the training 8 weeks out, you do not have the time. It's just a lot harder. So what I alluded to earlier was the T+12 method. So 12 weeks out, you identify the training. 11 weeks out, you identify the training resources, such as the training area you need, the ammunition you need, the trainers you need, and you identify those people. 10 weeks out, you refine what you're training on, where you're training at, who's doing what, and who your trainers are. And then 9 weeks out, you write your op order. So you write your garrison style platoon op order. And it says, T+8, this date, we're going to train on this task. These are the sub-collective tasks and the individual tasks that we will also be training on for that day. I want my platoon leader vision for the training is it's going to go something like this. Then, if you want, you can put an Op4 portion in that kind of separates it from the actual planning training. So you're setting the operational environment. Well, we're deploying to Afghanistan in the summer, so we're going to set this up on contingency operations. Or, we're training for LISCO, so the Op4 is going to be in a near-peer style fight. We're going to be using near-peer large-scale combat operations, Op4, and land. So you kind of set the OE with how your training is going to be. Maybe just a blanket weather statement for a guesstimate. That's something you update like the week before the training actually happens. And then you set the uniform that you think you want for the training. And then what's really important is you do the task to subordinate units. So the task to subordinate units portion is your squad leaders. And you basically just piece out what you want done to ensure that training is executed. So in that op order, task to subordinate units. Sergeant First Class so-and-so is in charge of certifying the trainers that will be training on all tasks. So basically you task your platoon sergeant to certify your squad leaders that are going to be doing the training. Train the trainers, certify the trainers. No later than T+6. And then an actual date, because a lot of them will not know what T+6 means. And then you look at the resources. So first squad leader, Staff Sergeant Davis, is tasked out to gather all identified internal resources and prepare them for the training. We will need 2 LMTVs, 2 butcher blocks, 5 cases of MREs, MREs is an external. And this needs to, internal resources need to be locked in, prepared and inventoried no later than T+4, and then PCCs, PCIs, and staged for execution no later than T+1. And then, second squad leader, Staff Sergeant Johnson, is in charge of identifying and allocating all external resources. External resources we've currently identified is we're going to need 3 cases of MREs. We're going to need 1 medic from HHB to tag on to the training as well. And we need to go to Task C and sign for the IED simulator and the Op4 garments and weapons no later than T+3. However, you need to verify that we're on the signature card and able to sign for those items no later than T+4. That way it gives us a week of time to fix any paperwork that could be screwed up. And third squad leader, Staff Sergeant Gilcheck, will be in charge of identifying any troops that are on profile and are unable to participate in the training. Those troops that are on profile will be the working details. All troops on profile that cannot participate in the training will still be present at the training. They will be the drivers for our LMTVs. They will be the personnel that set up the training aids and assist the trainers. They will be the personnel that go and pick up the MREs and issue the MREs out and fill up the water buffalo to make sure we have water on site. And you task out those people. And basically you task out everyone in your platoon for what you want to be done with no later than dates to make sure everything's going to come together. And it's not set in stone. You can revise that as things go along. And then T+8, time for the actual company training meeting to identify the training. You fix whatever's wrong in the order, you print it off, you hand it to the squad leaders, you brief it at the company training meeting, and everybody knows what they need to do for the next 8 weeks. And from there, you're just supervising and refining. Very simple. And making sure that they're actually doing it. And yeah, you have to write an op order every week. What I did was I just typed up a very generic op order. I tasked out the same squads to do the same things. And then I just changed names, dates, training areas, and weather. I highlighted it all in yellow. So every time I knew to go through and update that information. And you're just altering the same op order every week. And everybody gets in a comfortable battle rhythm. Like second squad leader is going to be the best freaking external resource training aid squad ever because they're going to get into a battle rhythm of doing it, and training's going to be flowing and proficient. So that's kind of a methodology to adapt if your short range training calendar is garbage, and also to kind of help you plan prior to 8 weeks out and adjust fire as needed. Questions on that or anything in relation? All right, so that's really kind of it about the ebb and flow of training. There are certain things that arise that will pop up. Some installations have policies in place to protect training because it's such a problem. For example, the 3-star at Fort Lewis published a bunch of memos because training wasn't happening. So one of the memos they published was that personnel in the MOSs of 91 Bravo, 91 Sierra, 91 Hotel, 91 Mike, and 92 Alpha could never be tasked out. That was because maintenance on the installation was suffering so poorly. A 3-star had to go, you're not allowed to task your mechanics out for anything like gate guard or area beautification because they need to be conducting maintenance and they need to be training. They also published a memo that was the T+6, meaning that if someone tried to alter your training or task you out within the T+6 window of your training, a memo by the had to be signed off by the battalion commander and submitted to the brigade commander going, my name is Lieutenant Colonel so-and-so. I have tasked out these personnel within T+6. This is why I had to do it. I have approved this. And that was to protect training. no lieutenant colonel is going to want to write that memo to the battalion commander saying we had to cancel their training because we screwed up and don't know how to plan accordingly. And then if they were within the T+3 window and brigade tried to task you out, the brigade commander had to do a memo, the same style memo, and submit it to the corps commander, not the division commander, the corps commander, and explain they couldn't plan properly and were tasking people out within 3 weeks of their training and canceling training. And the reason this was happening and the 3-star made this happen is because everybody was just winging it. They couldn't plan their way out of a wet paper bag. And we were reserving all of these training areas and getting all of this ammunition, and it was all just being wasted. So it was to protect personnel's time and then Army resources. So those exist at certain installations and in certain commands as well. So are we all tracking so far, platoon training, how to develop training, how training guidance is published, how training is input into DTMS? Based off all of that, your platoon training calendar gets put into DTMS 8 weeks out. And then from there, it's compiled into a company training calendar. Battalion commander signs off on it in DTMS, or if they were not good with computers like mine, you had to print it off and then they signed it in ink and then you had to scan it into DTMS. And that's published in the hallway so all soldiers can go to the calendar and look and know what uniform and where they're supposed to be at all times. And it all kind of feeds into each other. Sometimes it's executed well, sometimes it's executed poorly. It all depends on the people you're working with. Okay, so here's what I was alluding to earlier. So when we talked about DTMS access and who needs it and who doesn't, one good thing is the Army has come up with is this small unit leader tool. So I went to ATN and I just clicked on the small unit leader tool right there, and it brought me to here. What the small unit leader tool is a training management tool that's tied to DTMS. So your squad leaders and your team leaders can input all of that data into DTMS without needing a DTMS account. It's also a simplified version, so if they're really bad at computers, it's a lot easier than actually trying to navigate and use DTMS. So if you delegate out through the small unit leader tool to your squad leaders and your team leaders to input the information into that small unit leader tool, it can set you up for greater success in DTMS with little room for error or failure. And you as a platoon leader or company XO will have to do a whole lot less. They don't need an account. You just have to, you as a platoon leader have to have an account, and you can authorize them kind of locally, and they don't need any special paperwork or access. And they can put in the information it basically says here: ACFT, APFT, height, weight, what weapons they're assigned on the mall, the qualifications that they've done on their weapons, training tasks. And it's just a simplified version of DTMS that your squad leaders and team leaders can use to help manage this giant burden that is training management data. So that's something that you could look into to help your platoon. All right, everybody live?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so what I've done is now we're moving on to cats. Cats is kind of a lot. It looks the same as all the other sites that we've gone over. We're just going to input that UIC. Find the UIC first. All right, Whiskey Juliet, Alpha Tango, Hotel 0. So I input that UIC, and I'm going to hit search, and we ain't got nothing. So let's try to make sure I didn't screw that up. Whiskey Juliet, Alpha Tango, Hotel 0. Now let's see if it works with the actual right UIC. And it did. All right, so once again, there's that TONE number that identifies it as the company. Make sure it's the right company, which, you know, if you type in the wrong UIC but still get a company, you got lucky. So I've got it. I clicked on it to where it's highlighted. And then I can either click this button, which is View Selected Cats, which is going to be the Combined Arms Training Strategy, or generate the report. And then I have a drop down. If it's, oh, we're not going to work today, huh? Cool. All right, so they changed this website in the past 3 months since the last time I've taught this. Okay, so here is the CATS overview. All right, sweet. So this tells you what CATS is. It takes the task sets from your medal, and it kind of that word, puts it out into a sort of unit training plan with the crawl, walk, run methodology. It is not the end all be all how you have to do it, but it is more of a guide to help you along with that short range or long range training calendar. So it's a guide for the training strategy and how you should do training. It also provides you with your medal. So here is the medal for that company, and it's got every collective task and sub-collective task under it. Provides you with a unit task list, which these are approved by the proponent, that says that these are what you must do to accomplish your mission for that unit. There's a lot of pages of that. Then it has a training event matrix. I'm going to pull these reports. So these are kind of like quick viewers, if you will, but the reports are a lot more detailed, and we'll pull those and look at those. So it has the training event matrix. So what this does is it identifies the task number, what the task is, how many iterations you have to perform that task, and then the types of exercises you may have to do the task. So you have a prepare phase and a ready phase for this training event matrix. The prepare phase is going to be your crawl, walk, you're building up to it. The ready phase is going to be more of you're actually conducting it and you're good. So for the culminating training event, it says for established unit defense, you have to do 6 iterations of it. From there, 4 of those iterations are going to be sergeant's time training. So 4 Thursdays. And then that's going to be 4 hours. One of those culminating events is going to be an STX, a situational training exercise. And that situational training exercise is going to be 16 hours. Then the TOOT, which it's in one of these documents we're going to look at for the acronym. It's some sort of training event. I can't really remember. I think it's team level. Team executed warrior tasks, maybe. We'll see. 1 iteration for 8 hours. And this just basically lays out the iterations and the types of training events you're supposed to do for these tasks, how many and how long they are. This is more of an hourly planning requirement, so you can kind of get an idea of how long one of these culminating events will take and how often you're supposed to do them. Next up is the event list. These are broken down by task. And then it's tied to the training event matrix. So I clicked on conduct convoy protection platform live fire exercise. All that is you're in a convoy with a gun truck and you're doing a live fire. Now, it says that you have 2 of these, an FTX for conduct company sustainment operations, and then a live fire exercise for conduct convoy protection platform. And then you can click on these view items to get more of a detail. This is all just guidance for helping you plan and kind of get into some of the details. And then we get into the reports. The reports is everything we just went over, but in more detail. Now, what's important about this is for your assignment, you have to provide us with every one of these reports as part of what's called a due out. So you have to print these reports out, or if we're doing it digitally, you have to move them into your group folder on your Google Drive. And these are required for your assignment, for your unit. So the first report is the CATS EXUM, which is the executive summary. So this is the Combined Arms Training Strategy executive summary for this unit. So once again, it says what it is, it says the unit, it says it was approved. It gives you an introduction telling you what it is. It tells you that this EXUM is for this unit with the TOE number, also called the SRC9. It has the definition and methodology for how you're going to train on the task sets, what TE&Os are, all the cycles. It tells you the mission statement. So if you're trying to come up with a generic mission statement, there's that. It has the core capabilities of the unit identified, so what the unit is supposed to be able to do. It tells you what the task sets and the training event matrix are, so you know how to read those documents when I click on them. It tells you how to identify what a task is. So here's that breakdown of task numbers that I talked about before lunch, as far as what the first 2 mean, what they are, just kind of decoding. It has the mission essential task list for the unit, which it reads a little funny. It's got up top the mission essential task with the task number. Then it's got the supporting collective tasks that fall underneath it for every mission essential task. And that is the CATS executive summary. Just a down and dirty, here's what CATS is, here's what the unit's supposed to do, here's the unit tasks. Here's how you read some of the reports. Next is the actual CATS report itself. So it's going to be a much larger report. So it's got the table of contents that identifies the actual tasks, those met tasks, and then it has the events for those tasks, those culminating training events. Then it breaks down into unit task list, and it has all the unit tasks. So this is the task set for the first MET task. Establish a unit area. Has what warfighting function it goes under, which is protection. You'll learn about warfighting functions in TAC Log Week. Then it has the collective tasks. So the task numbers and the tasks actual descriptions. Then it has the event that you have to do for this task. So you have to do a TOOT, Sergeant's Time Training, and an STX. So this specific event, it's outlining that this one is the TOOT. So you're supposed to do one a year, whether you're in the prepare or the ready phase, it doesn't matter. And it's supposed to be an 8-hour event. Then it has for the reserve, so compo 2 or 3, it has that same cycle. So you're in prepare 1, 2, 3, 4, and then ready phase, doing one annually. The prepare 1, 2, 3, 4 are broke down in a different report, and it just identifies, how you know what cycle you're supposed to be in. The condition, so it labels the condition. It's if you're in the crawl phase, who the training audience is. It has the TADs, or the training aid device simulators, that you'll need. So for this TOOT, you'll need a sand table and a map board at a minimum. It's not multi-echelon. There's no concurrent training, meaning you're not doing multiple types of training for this. Any kind of training gates, facilities, it's recommending a classroom or a local training area or some sort of field training area. Gives you a purpose, an outcome, an execution guidance. And then what's good is it locates, or it tells you what resources you need. And it tells you where the resources come from. So in the company headquarters, you need this line identification number, which is going to come off the MTO, which is our next Army website. And it tells you, you're going to need one JLTV from company headquarters section. You're going to need one JLTV from the field feeding section. You're going to need one JLTV from distribution platoon, and then one JLTV from the maintenance platoon headquarters, one JLT, or one that is a shop truck. That's the maintenance MCO's Expando van. And then you need the JLTVs from the field maintenance section and the FMTs, the field maintenance teams. So it has those internal resources. And then it gets into the Sergeant's Time Training event for that same task with all the same information, just this time it's at Sergeant's Time Training and not the TOOT. And then it tells you about the STX that you have to do for that task. And what you need for that STX. Now, what to bear in mind here is this is all at the company level. You as a platoon leader are just looking at your platoon piece of the pie. So those platoon level tasks that apply to your platoon, that are the supporting collective tasks. And then, you're just looking at what your platoon has to do. So if you're a maintenance platoon leader, you're looking at what the maintenance platoon tasks are, and you're looking at what equipment is needed from the maintenance platoon, and you're just keeping it in your lane. Life's like about a bowling alley. So you're keeping it in your lane for these tasks. Don't get overwhelmed or bogged down or try to analyze all the company tasks and everything the company's doing. Just try to keep it in your lane as it applies. And this basically outlines it for every task. And that is the outline for every task training event for the cats using that crawl, walk, run methodology. Now, in one of those, it tells you what a toot is, but I'm just going to use the good old-fashioned method. Tactical exercise without troops. That doesn't make sense. Must be the Plan X type deal. Oh, yeah. That's the planning phase. Okay. So that's the cat's actual strategy, not the XM. Next report is the mission essential task to task set crosswalk. And this is just a different way to look at the medal. So over here, it's just crosswalking through. So we have the mission essential task on the left. Then from there, it has the supporting collective tasks for that task broken down. And then to the right, it has the task sets under those. Now, typically, when we brief, if we're briefing our medal, we'll say, first quarter, we're going to focus on conduct expeditionary deployment operations. From there, during the crawl phase, we're going to do these first two tasks, working on those. Then we get into the run phase, we're going to start incorporating and training on these, or walk phase, we're going to start incorporating these tasks concurrently. And then eventually, we're going to run with all of these in some sort of concurrent training event, like an STX or an FTX as identified by the cats. This training strategy. And we're also going to at least be able to perform these core capability task sets. But it just kind of shows you how everything correlates under the task. Then this next tab you click on, it just has all of the tasks for the unit task list. So if we want to be like, I'm a platoon leader, I don't care about all this stuff. We're going to data, filter, deselect all, and then maybe just go for anything that has a PLT in it, because obviously I'm a platoon leader. Maybe some sections and teams. Those could definitely be relevant if they fall under your platoon. But that's just a way to look at different tasks for the entire unit task list. Next report. This is the TADS report, the Training Aids Devices Simulators report. Man, oh man. So here's what the TADS report looks like. It opens up with the same page, says that what the report is, what the company is, the TOE number. It has the sergeant's time, and then it gets right into the tasks. So conduct field maintenance section operations. It has the components, so either active component or reserve component, and then those phases, prepare or ready, frequency, and duration. This is just a guide for training aids you may need. So for that task, it says you need a general purpose classroom or a training area. Let's try to find one that's like has something more than that to it. These are very bland, and they're not going to give you all the answers you need for identifying training aids. Here we go. Here's something different. So live fire exercise for convoy protection platform. Basically a convoy gunnery. It says that you need an IED simulator and a combat vehicle gunnery range. Well, no kidding. You know, I could have told you that. So, oh, here we go. STX for conduct and defend a tactical convoy. So during that 24-hour STX for this task, it says that you should need an IED suicide vest, IED simulator, a war wound moulage kit, virtual combat or convoy combat trainer, possibly if you're doing it in like an RVTT, which is just a convoy simulator, and then Miles gear if you're LARPing, live action role playing at one of the CTCs, combat training centers, or, you know, some sort of weapons effects, blanks, pyro, what have you. And then facilities you'd need. As we talked about yesterday, this is all very basic.
They had enough snacks today. He's gonna get sick.
So that was the TADS report. Next up is the task set report.
Hey, sir.
Yep.
This is Senator Ricky. So if you're unable to get some of those training aids, or they're not available around you, would that training not be considered like completed?
So it depends on the TE&O. If the TE&O says that you must have those, then yes, that training would be degraded, if you will. But if the TE&O and the CATS doesn't say that you have to have them, you can still conduct the training. Like, nobody's not going to say that your training was incomplete because you didn't have the IED simulator. Half the time we couldn't get the IED simulator, so we just took a bunch of Coke bottles and wires and, you know, we made our own IEDs and called it done with.
Roger.
Because one thing that, you know, kind of we didn't talk about is sometimes when it comes to resources, you may not be able to get them, like ranges. I can't tell you how many times we've tried to get and play in a range and we had it locked in, but some infantry unit was deploying and they took precedence over us. So they got our range. They took our range from us because they were more important. Same thing with like land and ammo conferences. You know, that land and ammo NCO in the S3 shop takes that long range training calendar and short range training calendar and goes to the land and ammo conference for installation and goes, we're going to need training areas for this month, this month, this month, and this month, which is why it's a good idea if you know what training areas you want to use, you put them on that short range training calendar so that poor E5 that's stuck in land and ammo that doesn't want to be there at least knows what training areas to ask for you when they're in that land and ammo conference for the entire installation. Now, if it's, you know, that new hotness training area that everybody wants, you may not get it, but they may offer you something else and you just make do. Or they may say both units have to use it and you have to give us a memorandum of agreement saying that you guys are going to play nice and not kill each other accidentally, with some sort of plan on how you plan on doing that. Leading into that, there's also only certain dodics you can use in certain training areas during certain times of the day. So you may want to have a high-speed STX with arty sims, grenade sims, blank ammunition, smoke grenades, flashbangs, and those have an alphanumeric code called a DODIC that identifies them. Well, range control puts out a list of what DODICs you're allowed to use in what training areas during what times of the year. So you may order all that cool, super high-speed pyro, and then when time goes to execute, and you're in the training area, you radio into range control, and you radio in your occupy, how many vehicles you got, how many personnel you got, how many weapons you got, what DODICs of ammunition you have in quantities, and they go, whoa, hold up. Hotel 3512 flashbangs. Those are no longer authorized in that training area for this training event. Washington State has issued a forest fire watch for our area due to drought conditions. You are not authorized to use that DODIC. Training's changed. No more flashbangs. Throw the flashbangs back in the truck. And then you have to turn them back into S3 land and ammo and, make do with what you got. Another thing is the S3 land and ammo. They manage what's called the STRAC. You'll learn about the STRAC in Ammo Week, but it's basically the ammo types and quantities that you're allocated for the year for the whole battalion. And so that land and ammo helps plan out the ranges for the whole year to make sure that all the ammo doesn't get used up first quarter. So by fourth quarter, when it's time to have that second range of the year, you still have ammo that you're allowed to use. You'd imagine that wouldn't happen, but it happens all the time. One year, the Army made a mistake and didn't give my battalion any ammo for the 240 Bravo, because my company and my battalion was the only ones that had 240. And so we shot on the EST and called that our qualification for a year. And then as we were able to, we sent like 1 to 2 240 crews with sister battalions with, platoon leaders that I was drinking buddies with to their ranges. So when time came and they're like, all right, everybody's qualified, we're going to do an ammo burn, my guys step up, qualified too. And that was making do with what we could because the Army said we didn't have any ammunition. On the flip side, being buddies with the land and ammo NCO, he comes to me, he's like, hey, sir, you want to do a grenade range? What do you mean grenade range? We don't get grenades. He's like, oh, no, we get 38 grenades a year we're allowed to use, and nobody ever uses them. Damn right. I want to blow some shit up. Let's blow some shit up. Can I use all 38? He's like, yeah, I'll tell the S3. So then, next thing I know, I'm in charge of planning a no longer platoon, but battalion level hand grenade range so we can all go and blow stuff up because nobody ever knew that we were allowed to draw grenades based on the STRAC. So those are things that will kind of morph and set and alter or change your training one way or another. All right, so now that we've kind of gone off on that side tangent about land and ammo and how they use the short range training calendar and how range control can affect your training and, DODICs and stuff like that, this is the task set report for this company. So once again, it has the overall MET task. Then the MET task has the supporting collective tasks and other tasks involved. So it tells you the task and all the tasks, so task sets. Big things that I see here, just looking at the platoon task. So this is 19 PLT 2406. Some platoon's going to have to do a roadblock and checkpoint. And then that's a subtask of that task. A squad's going to have to establish an access control point for that roadblock checkpoint. So this is kind of a better way of looking at the task sets. It has the task set category and all that information again. And then it has a description of the task set, capabilities and functions trained, any kind of training guidance about it, which usually those are not helpful at all. The task description, as far as what you're supposed to do, but that's also not really helpful. And then events that you can do associated with the task based on what your CATS, your Combined Arms Training Strategy, is. And it just goes through that same information for every task that's on the medal, or every MET task, MET, if you will. Blah, blah, blah. And last but not least, the actual training event matrix. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's going to look exactly like the quick view tab that we were looking at earlier. And all it is, it takes the Combined Arms Training Strategy, that full report, and it puts a matrix in for the training events broken down by MET. So it has the METs over here, the actual task of what it is, the frequency of what you're supposed to do, and then depending on which column it is, it has how often you're supposed to do it, for how long, and then overall ending it has training days. This is active component in the prepare cycle. So if you're active duty in the prepare cycle, you're looking at 68.5 training days. Then in the ready cycle, it's the exact same thing. And then it should go down into prepare 1, 2, 3, and 4 for reserves and National Guard. Is any of this realistic? In my opinion, no. It's a good idea, but it's just impossible to accomplish all of it. Especially when you get into the real Army or you get into your National Guard swing. I mean, you honestly mean to tell me that if your National Guard unit's in prepare 3 cycle and they're almost awesome and ready to go, that they're going to be able to complete 47.5 days of training? Well, 30 days of those training better be at freaking Fort Irwin, California, that their state paid for them to go, or else it ain't happening. So while this is a good idea and it's a good model and path to help you identify training and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, keep in mind you may not have that 47.5 hours or days in reality, or active duty. You may not have those 68.5 days. It just depends on where you're going and what you got going on. So what questions do we have about that?
You want to break it? If you break it, then you can't play it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna do a real quick summary of kind of what we went through earlier for what you're gonna need for the assignment, because I was told I was cutting out earlier. So first thing I'm gonna do is click on Medal from Army Training Network. It's gonna populate. I don't know why it does this. We're gonna erase the TDA because that's going to prevent our search from popping up. because the TDA is one of those weird types of units, like an Army command or a schoolhouse. We're going to type in our UIC. Whiskey Alpha, Whiskey Juliet Alpha Tango Hotel 0. Whiskey Juliet Alpha Tango Hotel 0. So from there, I'm going to hit search. My unit is going to populate down here. I'm going to click on that. And then from there, my metal has populated for the company level. I can click plus, and that's going to bring up the supporting collective tasks for those met. And then if I want, I can get the TE&O for that supporting collective task. I just click on it. It automatically downloads to the left, and then bam. I have my TE&O for that supporting collective task. Let's see if this one has individual tasks. Okay, cool. So that is basically the metal tool. Next, relevant for you as platoon leaders, we're just going to cut all of the middlemen out and click on this new hotness, the platoon leader TE&O button. So this is how you get to your platoon tasks and TE&Os. Just at the platoon level. So cutting out company, cutting out battalion, all that nonsense. So from there, it looks similar. I'm going to go to the UIC, and I'm going to put in the UIC for my unit. I'm going to hit search. My unit populates down here. I verify that's my unit. Click on it. And bam, there is every platoon task that's in my company. 14 total. Also, I can click on that, and it's going to provide me with the TE&O for that task. And then the TE&O, it says what the task is, foreign disclosure, references. It gives me a task condition standard, if it's live fire or not, that objective T matrix for how to evaluate the task when we perform it. Any remarks, so it does define static and dynamic threats for the task. And then single and complex threats, it tells you, if you're going to get a T or T minus for this task, you have to do it in a dynamic and complex environment with at least 4 OE variables. Basically explains some of the stuff that isn't self-explanatory from that criteria matrix. Then we get some notes, some safety info. Then it gets into the performance steps and measures checklist. So your go, no go, every step you have to complete when doing this task. Basically the answer to the test. Then once again, asterisks next to a task mean that it's a leader step. And then plus signs next to a task mean that it's a critical step. So there's your answer to the test for the task when you're being evaluated, not necessarily when you're training on it. Then it's got the iterations. So this is basically just a breakdown of what's going on at the training for the iterations of the training. And it's going to be applied to that objective T criteria. So you're able to get, some sort of substantiated evaluation or grade or rating, if you will. Then any MOP 4 statements or MVG statements supporting collective tasks that fall up under this task, OP 4 tasks, And then an environment block, which is, you know, it's just going to be generic, not really helpful to you. And then same thing with a safety block. Safety block's not going to be very helpful either. They're both just pretty generic. And that is the platoon task tool. Now, another relevant one to you, once again, the TE&O task search. So if you know the task that you're trying to look up specifically, you can just go straight to the task search. One of the things that you kind of need to be able to look up and do is look up individual tasks. So let's go plan convoy operations. That's a transportation lieutenant task because it says it's 88 Alpha. So I went to the TE&O. I looked at the supporting individual tasks. I got one. I copied and pasted it. I'm going back over to my task search button. I'm just going to paste that task right into the task number. It's an individual task, so I'm going to select it. I'm going to search, and it didn't work. Why not? I have no idea. 551-88 Alpha 1209. All right, let's try a different one. Let's try this transportation lieutenant task. All right, so that one worked. So identify movement requirements for hazardous, classified, and sensitive cargo. So let's see what this individual task a transportation lieutenant is supposed to be able to do says. So you, as the transportation lieutenant in that platoon, as an individual, need to be able to conduct a risk assessment, identify cargo with all those substeps, coordinate movement of hazardous cargo with all those substeps, coordinate movement of classified sensitive cargo with all those substeps. And then it's got your 4 go, no-go criteria. Conduct a risk assessment, identify the cargo, coordinate movement of the cargo, and coordinate movement of classified sensitive cargo. And then it has all the references with somewhat better environment and safety bullets. And that's the individual task lookup, or really any task lookup, but if you use the other stuff, you should only need to use it for individual tasks. That is everything on Army Training Network. What are your questions?
Sir, please, can you review the first page of the CATs? I missed which proponent you selected. I tried to put in the only the UIC and search it. Nothing pops up.
What UIC did you put in? All right, so you said in CATS, you put in the UIC and nothing showed up, right?
It should be good now. The first time I did it, I did it like 3 times already. It didn't pop up, sir.
See, I mean, I'm going to say that they're not perfect. They're working better for me now than they ever have been, but sometimes they're a little glitchy. I'm going to show you a different way to look up the unit as well right now. And it's in FMS Web. FMS Web stands for Force Management. I think the S is System. But While I'm doing this, what other questions do we have? All right, so FMS Web, login screen. Okay. So this is FMS Web. FMS Web is where you go to pull your MTO. The MTO is just an Army certified document that says this is what your unit is supposed to have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to authorization document review, because that's what's going to give me the MTO. So I click on authorization document review, and it's going to bring me right here. So next, up top, you got these little columns or buttons. We're going to click on MTO documents because we want to look at an MTO because we're in a real unit, not a TDA. So from there, there's a bunch of different ways to search. So you can search by unit command, whether they're in ForceCom or CENTCOM or whatever. You can search by document number. You're probably not going to know that, so kind of useless. You can search by UIC, which you can use. That's useful. You can search by unit name. The only issue with it is you have to use 3 digits at a minimum. And if you don't put it in the way the Army puts it in, it won't find it. So let's just say that you're looking for 82nd Airborne. So you type in 82ND, it will not pull up 82nd Airborne. But if you type in 88D or 82D, because they don't use the N, it will pull up 82nd Airborne, if that makes sense. So it has to, the 3 digits you use have to be what's in the unit name. SRC, the SRC is also that TO and E number that was on cats and metal. That's what I'm going to show you how to find. You can go by location. The location tool is pretty useful for National Guard. If you're trying to transfer units either in the state or out of the state, you can search by location, search what's in the state, and then click on what the unit is, and it'll pull up a screen that tells you what armories, what units are at what armories in the state, so you know where you would be drilling at if you transfer to that unit. Now, I know you could probably just call and ask somebody, but that's a way as well. So I'm going to go by organization, and I'm going to use block style because I prefer block style. Then it's going to give you these different types of units up top that you can click on. You know, Corps, Army commands, Army support, RV service component commands, DVARTI, Striker Brigade combat teams, Armor Brigade combat teams, Infantry Brigade combat teams. So it has all different types of units. We're going to go with Armor Brigade combat team because in ALU, we use the methodology. If you can support an Armor Brigade combat team, you can support anything. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. So now I'm going to find my unit. So it has all the UICs, and then it has the actual names of the units as well. So I'm going to go with Not anything with Fort Hood. So let's go with 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 1st Armored Division. And bam, it pops up. It's got the brigade UIC over top, and you can click on UIC, and it will show all the child UICs for the parent UICs. Then you notice we have all these battalions, and all the battalions end in Alpha Alpha because they're a higher headquarters battalion UIC that's deployable. We got the HHC, 4 Brigade. We got 1/6 Infantry Battalion, 135 Armor Battalion, Field Artillery Battalion. But we are support. So this is of note. If you're in a forward support company and you're attached to support 1/6 Infantry, if you click on 1/6 Infantry, it will not bring your unit up. So if you're in the forward support company, you have to go to the support battalion, the brigade support battalion, because even though you don't have anything to do with them and you're with your infantry unit supporting them, on paper, you are still in that support battalion. So we're going to click on the support battalion, and it's going to open up all the companies in the support battalion. So starting with Alpha Company and then ending with the HHC. Now, we've been focusing on Hotel FSC. So here's the Hotel FSC right there. So it tells me, there's the FSC, there's the UIC. So that is a way to identify the UIC if you don't know. Now, where's my hyperlink for the support battalion? Here we go. Hyperlink for the support battalion. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to bring up the actual MTO. Here's where a lot of people get confused, because when you're looking at an MTO, you can only filter it down to the battalion level. So it's going to pull up this whole battalion MTO. The summary page. So it tells you how many officers are in this battalion, how many warrant officers are in the battalion, how many enlisted are, and then total. Now, the reason it has a required and an authorized number is sometimes those are different. Sometimes they require more than they're actually authorized, and sometimes they may be authorized more than they actually require. So another one is deployment. So they may require more than they're authorized, and when they deploy, they will fill that requirement with what's called a YS tasker, which the Army just goes and picks someone that meets the MOS and rank, and they get to deploy with that unit, and kind of a surprise. But always go with for schoolhouse purposes, always go with the authorized number. From there, you have the approved TOW narrative. That is the TOE number. The TOW number, that is for the battalion. That is one way you can get the information. But if you copy and paste that TOE number into Metal or into CATS, it's going to give you the battalion information. So what we need to do is, let's click on this and see what happens. So this is just a bunch of information about the battalion, who they are, what their mission is, just some admin stuff. Should be in. Let's go recaps. All right, so what I did is I clicked on recaps. The recaps button is kind of like a summary, because this MTO in FMS Web will identify every person and every piece of equipment this unit is supposed to have, like down to the bayonet. Recaps is kind of like a summary page. So I clicked on recaps. Now I'm going to click on SRC recaps. This is where I get the company level SRC, which is also the TOE, which will help me find it in CATS. So not to be confused, you have the UIC over here to the left. Those are all battalion UICs. You have the effective date, which just means the date that this MTO goes into effect. Then it starts to break down subunits. MTOs are organized by paragraph line number. So paragraph 100 is a company. And then paragraph line number 100-01 is a specific line within that company. So paragraph 100 is HHC. I know that because it has the subcode right here. The last two letters of the UIC, Tango 0, is HHC. And then it goes alphabetically for all the rest of the MTOs. This SRC is still the battalion SRC, so you don't need that. Don't care about battalion level. Jump forward over to here. Well, we're focusing on Hotel FSC, so I'm going to find the Hotel 0. And then I've got my company SRC right there. Control C. Let's delete the UIC from that page. Well, let's see if this actually works. Bam. And there's all the platoon tasks for that company TOE number. Kind of a long way to get around things. And obviously, if you made it this far, you can probably figure out what the UIC is, because you just take that battalion UIC, the alpha alpha off, and then add whatever letter and 0. And then if you search the way, like I showed you to search with the block hierarchy for the whole organization, I mean, obviously you're going to have the FSCs, you're going to have every UIC and know what company is what. So just a bunch of good ways to navigate FMS Web. So now we're on FMS Web. Most of the time it'll show you the patch that you're supposed to wear on this summary page. It has the, the information, where they're at, the effective date. You can click on the narrative and it gives you the narrative, what the unit is, what each paragraph number is, what their mission is. So, let's say that you're a National Guard lieutenant in a Bravo maintenance company. Paragraph 300 is the Bravo maintenance company for this battalion. And it gives you the mission for the Bravo maintenance company. And then if you care about this sort of thing, it shows you what administrative changes have been made to the MTO. A lot of times it will tell you, we, based off force management data, we didn't need this many 91 Bravos E4s, so we removed them and replaced them with 191 Bravo PFC. So in the summary, it'll give you some changes. You can click on subunits and teams. That's going to bring up a company structure within the battalion. Maybe. So this is another way. It brings up the company structure within the battalion. So it has the subunit paragraph numbers. Then their titles, where they're at. their SRCs, the TOE document for the company itself. Which is kind of annoying because you have to click all that stuff. But that's that. Then you can look at it in paragraph header format. And it's just going to be the sections of the paragraphs. So in paragraph 100, which is the HHC, the headquarters company, it's got the sub-paragraph lines. 101 is the command group. 109 is the command and control and SASMO. And then it has all that by paragraph, sub-paragraph of that. Let's just go ahead and, so if you click on personnel details, it'll give you the personnel breakdown of every individual in the battalion. So if you're trying to find a job or figure out what slot you could be in your battalion you're going to, this is the breakdown. It goes by paragraph, subparagraph, and then paragraph line number. So this would be, say we're trying to identify the battalion commander. Battalion commander is in paragraph 100, subparagraph 101, and their line number is -01. So it would be 100 101-01. But let's get something you actually care about. 500 should be an FSC. So you are curious as to what position you might get put in Delta FSC, which supports the cavalry unit. You can scroll down to line number 500, which is Delta FSC, and then start looking at what positions they have. So they got the XO, which is a 92 Alpha First Lieutenant. That's what's supposed to be there, not what's physically there. That could be you. Then you got the Distro PL, which is supposed to be a 19 Alpha First Lieutenant. So a cavalry First Lieutenant as the distribution platoon leader. Once again, supposed to be there, could be a quartermaster lieutenant. Then you got the maintenance platoon leader right here, which is supposed to be an ordnance First Lieutenant. Well, it doesn't have to be a First Lieutenant. It's probably going to be you. And then you got the maintenance control officer, which is an ordnance First Lieutenant. And then you can also look at the people your platoon is supposed to have as well. Then if you click on the equipment, you're trying to get an idea of what equipment you may have to sign for. That would be on your platoon hand receipt. You can also go to whatever paragraph line number is for your platoon, and it'll show you the equipment. Closing these windows out, maybe the internet will work quicker. So this is it. Like, let's scroll down to something you actually care about. Let's get into, once again, paragraph 500. So you got the maintenance platoon headquarters. There is every piece of equipment that is in the maintenance platoon headquarters, which is just the platoon leader and platoon sergeant. Then it has required and authorized numbers over here. Then maintenance control section, which is part of the maintenance platoon. All the equipment there. And then the field maintenance section, all the equipment they have. And it's organized by LIN, what's called line item number. Typically, that's what you're going to see on your platoon hander seat, it's going to be organized like this, line item number alphabetically. It's not going to make a lot of sense. And the nomenclatures are going to be like this, and they're also going to be cut off. And a lot of those don't make sense either. So like computer set digital JBCP AN YUK 128 Bravo version 3. That's what it's going to look like on your hander seat. A way that can help you besides looking in the regulation for that piece of equipment is get on FMS Web, find it, click on the hyperlinked LIN. It'll open up in a new tab. It'll give you images. So there's image 1, which is everything that's supposed to be with that piece of equipment. There's image 2, which is the actual main component or piece of equipment itself. You can click on this for a description, and it'll give you a description of what that piece of equipment is, along with its physical characteristics. And then you can also go down here. It's got a lot of information, how much it costs, associated equipment that may be with it, different LINs depending on what unit you're in. But another useful part of this is you can go to the BOIP, the BOIP, and you can click on the BOIP. The BOIP will bring up a new page, and it will give you a description of the equipment and the capabilities of the equipment and how it's supposed to be employed. Not 100% useful for this computer, but if you're trying to figure out what an Army wrecker is, what its capabilities are, how it's supposed to be employed on the battlefield, and its physical characteristics for, say, unit movement, this is a good place to get that information. And then you can just skip that crazy process and go to the personnel and equipment combined, which just takes the last 2 pages we looked at and puts all the information on one document. And it has that. So the recaps, like I said earlier, is just a summary page, basically. So you can do a personnel recap, a grade recap based on rank, position by location. The only one I really ever use is going to be that SRC recap to figure out the TOE number or SRC number. They're the same thing at the company level, or this equipment recap. Because if somebody goes, hey, how many fuelers do we have in the battalion? Well, this is an easy way to get that answer. So what it is it has the LINs, those line identification numbers for the pieces of equipment in alphabetical order, their description, and then they're required authorized by paragraph line number. So if we remember, 100 is HHC, and then it goes alphabetical from there. So 200 is going to be Alpha Company or Alpha Distribution Company. 300 is going to be Bravo Field Maintenance Company. 400 is going to be Charlie Medical Company. 500 is going to be Delta FSC. 600 is going to be Echo FSC. 700 is going to be Fox FSC. 800 is going to be Golf and Hotel FSC. And 900 is going to be India FSC. And then you have the total for the entire battalion. Once again, go with authorized numbers. And that can tell you the breakdown of equipment for the entire battalion and total all in one shebang. Now, I'm going to show you what I meant when I said line 800 was golf and hotel. So, if we look at this SRC recap, we see subunit 800. Then we see subcode hotel and golf. That's golf and hotel FSC. Then we see that golf and hotel also have the same SRC or TOE number. Anybody want to take a stab at why?
Pardon me, sir. Is it because they have both the same exact mission?
Correct. Golf and hotel FSC have the same exact mission. They're copied and pasted. They have the same amount of people, the same amount of equipment. They're doing the same thing. And if I can get this to cooperate with me. And so if we look at this alphabetically, Alpha companies, the distribution company, Bravo's field maintenance, Charlie's medical. Then we get into FSCs. Delta FSC supports the cavalry. 19 Delta, Cav Scout, Delta FSC supports cavalry. Echo FSC, E for engineers. Echo FSC supports the engineer battalion. Fox FSC, F for field artillery. Fox FSC supports the field artillery battalion. Golf and hotel both support the armor heavy armor brigade or combined arms battalion. And then down here, it has Juliet FSC. I called it India FSC earlier. The reason on paper it is Juliet FSC is because our Army computer systems cannot tell the difference between a 1 and an I. So for paperwork purposes, they had to change that I to a J. So on all the paperwork, India FSC is actually Juliet FSC, but on the guidon and with the people for historical purposes, it's actually India FSC. But golf and hotel, they're both paragraph line number 800 because they do the same thing. Army copied and pasted. And if we look right here, we'll look at 1/6 infantry. This is what I mean when I say they're an armor or an infantry heavy combined arms battalion. 1/6 infantry has 2 rifle companies and 1 armor company. So that means that they're going to be supported by India FSC because India FSC supports the infantry cab, or the cab that has the most infantrymen. That means that 135 is going to be supported by either golf or hotel, because 135 armor has 2 armor companies and 1 infantry company. So they're the armor heavy. And then the same with wherever the other, there it is, 137 armor. Now, you got to watch it with those names, because sometimes they'll be called 135 Infantry Regiment for historical purposes, because before the Army went to combined arms battalions, it was just infantry. And they may actually be an armored a cab with more armor companies in it. So you do always need to kind of check that to make sure how many armor infantry companies are in that battalion. Don't just trust the name. But there's that, and that answers that question. Sometimes FMS Web can get a little confusing, so you can click on this unit structure button. And it will pull up a legacy view. That's a little helpful if, you know, you're having trouble grasping all of this information and kind of organizing it. The only issue I think is, I think they do maintenance on this specific button on Thursdays, and you're unable to access the information this way on Thursdays. unless they fix that. Okay, so it's going to work for us. And what it does is it just gives you a different view. So it's got the battalion UIC and all the battalion information. And then I can click that positive button, and it's going to load. And when it loads, it's going to bring up all the companies underneath that battalion. So from there, it has all the companies in the battalion. And then it has the names. Looks like they fixed it like a year ago. They had some of the names messed up. You had to only go by the UICs. But it's got all the companies under that battalion and the names, and then the company personnel info. So let's say you're going to be in Juliet FSC. I can click, or India FSC. I can click on it, and when it loads, it'll bring up the platoons and sections in Juliet or India FSC. So it's got 901, which is the company headquarters. That's the commander, first sergeant, supply sergeant, XO. Then it's got the field feeding section. Then it's got the distro platoon, the maintenance platoon, and then the field maintenance teams. So I can click on maintenance platoon, and it will eventually bring up the sections within my maintenance platoon. And then I can click on one of, the sections and see what's in my maintenance platoon headquarters. So I got a platoon leader, a truck, a platoon sergeant, and some equipment. And then I can click on the platoon leader, and I see that me as the platoon leader, personally, I have my M4 carbine, my chemical mask, the red dot or hopefully Trigicon sight that goes on my M4, and then my bayonet, which you'll probably never see. Then I can see what's in my truck. So my maintenance platoon leader, I've got my command and control vehicle, and inside that it has a plugger, a crypto unit for the plugger, the power supply, some radios, the actual truck itself, which is an 1165A1, MVGs, and some other radio and computer equipment for your Blue Force tracker or JBCP, whatever they're calling it nowadays. So that is a way to see it by section for everything in that company in a different organization method if, you got problems with the other ways, which I'll be honest, it's kind of confusing looking at FMS Web sometimes. So circling back, why is all this relevant to you? 1, you can look up your position in a unit. 2, you can look up positions in other units and in your state at different armories. 3, you can see what personnel and equipment you're supposed to have in your platoon. 4, you can identify company level UICs and TOEs for the assignment. 5, you're going to see what personnel and equipment you have in your platoon, which you're going to need to be able to identify what internal resources you have for training for what external resources you're going to have to ask for training. 6, you have to know how to read an MTO to pass the TAC log test. 7, you have to know how to read an MTO to pass Plan X week. 8, you have to know how to read an MTO to pass Fix Mix week. Long story short, we do a lot of MTO work with personnel and equipment and capabilities, and FMS Web is like the one-stop shop for all that information. There's a lot more you can do on here, Those are just my little tips and tricks as far as getting around it and finding things and information, especially equipment information for your hand receipt or for an assignment. But FMS Web is one of those things where the more you play with it and the more buttons you click, the more you learn. Let me show you one more thing.